So this is the 2055 GMT edition of the Baby Angel Geronimo edition of Khoodeelaar Television, being broadcast only on the internet, not on satellite, not on terrestrial, and not on cable platforms. This is 2055 hours GMT edition of the Khoodeelaar television channel, being broadcast under the theme of Baby Angel Geronimo from the United Kingdom on Thursday the 11th of August 2022. As we have been regularly updating contextually and topically, Baby Angel Geronimo remains the most innocent, most prescient, and most authentic, most compassionate witness to the misconduct, misbehavior, criminality, cruelty, corruption, depravity of the cabal of the regime fronted by the congenital liar Boris Johnson in the so-called United Kingdom. We shall be updating in this edition as well as to how Baby Angel Geronimo's theme extends across the board and vindicates Baby Angel Geronimo every time that the depravity cabal fronted by the crooks and the criminals at various stages, including the main frontage, the congenital liar Boris Johnson, does something that is wrong, intentionally wrong, criminally wrong, and lacking compassion, care, etc. This is the Khoodeelaar television channel coming from the United Kingdom. This edition is timed at 2055 hours GMT. Now, what happened during the day, Thursday, 11th of August 2022, was something that should have happened, as I said, 75 years ago. Contextually, topically, and historically, and from other very serious standpoints. The statement made by Imran Khan to the television channel live, he was being interviewed live on a Pakistani television channel during the day, Thursday, the 11th of August 2022. What Imran Khan said had not been said by the people who took part in and led or organized the so-called Arab Spring a few years ago in the North African countries, nor in the Egyptian capital where the fascist who is in charge, in control of the country, murdered new campaigners, and the fascist is being tolerated to carry on the fascistic regime in Egypt without even a comment in the so-called liberal, democracy-conscious West, the criminal Assisi. Now, they murdered Saddam Hussein and Muammar Gaddafi. Both victims of murders, both murders have created monumental, phenomenal upsets and instability and violence and violations and denials and deprivations across the Middle East, across of course, Iraq and also in Libya. Whereas the Egyptian fascist is being armed by the West and is being armed and encouraged solely on the ground that he would be murdering Muslims. Now, this is a fact. So, given that kind of background in the region, the Arab Spring was an overhyped, overstated slogan. It should have happened. The actual spring, the political spring should have happened But it didn't happen. So the fantasy, the phantom spring, was foisted on the consciousness of the viewing public. We shall come back to the Arab Spring, fantasy and the phantom. As we move on to Pakistan, and during Thursday, Imran Khan made a very important, integrated speech. By no means is the speech complete. By no means is the speech honest to the extent that he referred to East Pakistan by recalling his trip to East Pakistan when he was a young person playing cricket. So the demand that we have been making on Imran Khan, whether he is in power or not, remains absolutely solid and valid. And it becomes even stronger with his reference, the way that he referred to East Pakistan on Thursday. And on Wednesday, the 10th of August, he referred to Bangladesh. But again, it was incomplete and it was unnecessarily dishonest. He could have been honest, but he wasn't honest, because what Imran Khan is still doing in Pakistan is kind of trying to accommodate the various kind of factions in order to stay afloat as the leader of the biggest party, not greatest, but biggest political party in the country, in Pakistan, as he correctly points out in numerical terms. No other party is as large as the Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf party, and no other party has the standpoint, the view, the objective, the purpose of defending and protecting Pakistan as a whole and representing Pakistan as a whole. What Imran Khan has pointed out correctly on the facts is that all the other parties, so-called, are regional or about other issues or smaller issues, and they cannot compete with the Tehreek-e-Insaf. And another point he made was that the enemies of democracy, enemies of a democratically strong Pakistan, which does not exist, but it is underway. Let's hope that what Imran Khan said is that this is something absolutely astonishing, remarkable, and most welcome. Whoever is advising him, is getting it spot on. Imran Khan is not talking about Winston Churchill or any American kind of specimen of democracy. He is talking about Ibn Khaldun. Come on. Ibn Khaldun is one of the world's biggest thinkers. Ibn Khaldun should have been talked about and taught about all those 75 years. Ibn Khaldun. And he says, what is the purpose of Pakistan? Now he says, Ibn Khaldun is the answer. So he has put on the gallery Ibn Khaldun next to the Prophet of Islam, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and sitting very near them are Muhammad Iqbal and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Now, what Imran Khan also added is absolutely spot on. That Jinnah was not the proponent of Muslim state. Jinnah had been given the name, the title, by a non-Muslim woman, Sarojini Naidu. He didn't say about, Imran Khan didn't mention Sarojini Naidu or Mr. Gokhale, but those two non-Muslims were among the most dedicated admirers of the integrity and the sagacity and the wisdom and the farsightedness and the sheer intellectual height and power of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Sarojini Naidu said Sarojini Naidu is the one that actually began to compile and edit the phenomenally powerful speeches of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. And when she was doing that, of course, she was following him, listening to his speeches and conversations, but she also found the depth of his wisdom and intelligence that no one matched. No one matched by an imperial mile or imperial miles. Sarojini Naidu found that Muhammad Ali Jinnah was the real leader of the subcontinent's people, Hindus and Muslims and Sikhs and others. But he was completely misunderstood, understated. Now, I'm a proud fan of Netaji Boshu. Of course I am. But even Netaji Boshu, of course, he was not there. I mean, he was much younger than Jinnah, and he was not a contemporary of the leaders, Gokhale, Naidu, Mr. Jinnah, Mr. Nehru. So she said, Naidu, that he is the ambassador. Muhammad Ali Jinnah is the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity. That is the leader of the free subcontinent that the subcontinent never had. It was the loss of the subcontinent, not the loss of Jinnah, most certainly not the loss of the people like Sarojini Naidu, who recognized his talents and abilities and his timeliness, his promptness, etc. Now, looking at 75 years of the pettiness and the stupidity of the likes of Narendra Modi. My goodness, look at the pretentious criminal. Every day he has got a fake kind of dress. He dresses in kind of like fake, completely fake ways to impress people, the ordinary Hindus. I mean, he has not a single sentence of original thought about India, about the subcontinent, about the world. And he was shamelessly conspiring during one of the SARC sittings in Nepal with the Shaitan, Nawaz Sharif. And the Shaitan, Asif Ali Zardari, was not far behind. Those two criminals repeatedly plotted to incite attack by India on the Pakistan army. Think about that. So when Imran Khan proposes to go on, tomorrow is Friday, so Saturday he's going to do a big event, big rally. And that rally is going to be the revolution rally. The rally about the purpose of Pakistan, because these criminals that are colluders with Narendra Modi, it's not like Narendra Modi is sleeping and nobody knows where he is and everything, and all the information is coming by a third or fourth or fifth kind of hand sources. Narendra Modi has been invited into the democratic seat or the seat of Pakistan by the traitor Shaitan Nawaz Sharif and the traitor Asif Ali Zardari. Zardari sought the help of Narendra Modi. Both Zardari and Shaitan Nawaz Sharif, they sought the help of Narendra Modi in protecting them against Pakistan army. Can you believe that? Can you imagine anything like that? Anything 1,000 times even smaller than this. This is big betrayal, big treachery, and big kind of incitement and explosion. So when Imran Khan said that the revolution is based on finding the question, the answer to the question, what is the purpose of Pakistan? Pakistan ka matlab kya? And the answer is, of course, La ilaha illallah. But that is absolutely logical and in keeping with the recollection of Ibn Khaldun and Ibn Khaldun's manifesto and the Ibn Khaldun's interpretation. He said that the only reason why human beings have been sent, created by God, is to create justice on the planet. Insaf. And this is actually a continuation in paraphrases of what the Prophet of Islam sallallahu alaihi wasallam has said. And very similar things have been said by Muhammad Iqbal and Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Now, Muhammad Ali Jinnah was recognized by the British, not just Mountbatten, but others. All of them recognized that he was physically and otherwise far taller than all his contemporaries. This is why they were so jealous of Muhammad Ali Jinnah. It wasn't anything that in material terms that Jinnah did wrong that could justifiably be cited as the reason for this hatred mounted against his image, that is to say, against his reputation. And he achieved something that they will never forgive him for. What Imran Khan said on Thursday was that while Jinnah was working as the ambassador for Hindu-Muslim unity to fight the British imperialists, so that in the post-British Empire subcontinent, Hindus and Muslims would live together and benefit from the fruits of the freedom for which they've been struggling. But as he was doing his best to unite the Hindu and Muslim leadership, Muhammad Ali Jinnah realized that the Hindu leaders were not aiming for the same outcome. The Hindu leaders at that time, critically and crucially, were secretly plotting to use the Muslims as part of the campaign against the British. But as soon as the British were got rid of, the Hindus would become the new rulers and the Muslims would become the subservient servants and slaves. That is why Muhammad Ali Jinnah said that no, we have to have two nations. That is the two-nation theory, not one nation. Post 1947, post-August 1947. Now, this is coming up to 12th of August, and in 2 days, there will be the anniversary, and we shall be talking more and more about this anniversary and the context of the... Now, going back to when our broadcast began in 2000, we said when beginning to comment on the India South cinema, it's an odd choice apparently, isn't it? But it is India South cinema, well, Bombay as well, but India South cinema that is brainwashing most furiously. I mean, India South cinema is the main battleground for the control of the minds and hearts of the ordinary Indians. And the plot, the storylines are absolutely absurdly Hindutva based, not on two-nation theory, not on the acceptance of the Sikhs, acceptance of the Buddhists, and most certainly not on the acceptance of the Muslims. And all the scripts and all the storylines are absolutely absurd and stupid. Even the ones that pretend to be acknowledging the existence of Muslims and the Sikhs and the Buddhists hardly feature. Remember, the Buddhists, Gautam Buddha's followers, were slaughtered by the Brahmins. The Hindus massacred the equivalent today of millions of Buddhists. Hindus massacred millions and millions and millions of Buddhists. Pause there, and then you think that is the reason why in Southeast Asia, Far East Asia, let's say in the countries like Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam, and in China, there are so many Buddhists. They fled. Buddhists fled for their lives, and those who fled were the only ones that, the ones that could manage to flee. There were uncountable numbers of Buddhists that were massacred, raped, and so on by the Hindus. So when Modi dresses up as Modi sometimes wears the beard, sometimes wears the cap, sometimes wears the whatever, any kind of decoration, and Modi looks completely false and artificial. This falsehood and artificiality on the part of Narendra Modi is sign of desperation, because in the piece that Imran Khan kind of broadcast on Thursday, he said that Modi and others were constantly spreading a rumor across the Indian population that Imran Khan was going to take over India, or Imran Khan was going to march and take over India. Now, it is not inconceivable. It is not inconceivable, because I'm saying this based on what I said 2.5 years ago. The amount of people that are being neglected in India, in the seven states, the seven sister states of the northeast of India, including Assam and Meghalaya and other smaller states. These people are completely taken for granted. And then there are the real kind of people that are denied what is called the so-called scheduled caste, who are in the Maharashtra and other places, bigger states. And in Delhi and around Delhi and in Uttarakhand and in Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, there are so many millions, hundreds of millions of Indians in dire poverty, desperate poverty. And uncounted numbers of women and children, girls, are being sexually violated, murdered, butchered by the Hindutva carrying, Hindutva banner waving gangs of criminals that Modi fronts. So while Imran Khan's confrontation with the two criminal families, Zardari and Sharif, continues, it has to be seen in the context of what is happening in India, because the democratic revolution that Imran Khan is talking about is needed not just in Pakistan, but in India as well. It's an updated form of what was happening in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, while the ambassador of Hindu-Muslim unity just in time realized that the Hindus were plotting mass slaughter of Muslims as soon as the British left. So this week in India, there will be a lot of bogus claims. And the most insulting word in context that can be used is partition. What these criminals mean by partition is that India was partitioned by Muslims, as if Muslims were some kind of alien force. Muslims are not. Muslims have been there spontaneously. Islamic faith was spontaneously embraced. It was not imposed by war. And the Babri Mosque scandal highlights the complete idiocy of the Muslim leaders in India. They have allowed this Babri Mosque complete lie, pack of lies to be peddled. In India, even now, every day, every single day across India, especially South India, mainly in numerical terms, large numbers of people, so-called scheduled caste, are embracing Islam. Not because somebody is bribing them or somebody is beating them or whatever. They're doing that because that's the only place where the spiritual, moral, ethical solace and peace can be found. Modi and the Amit Shah should be ashamed, absolutely ashamed, these criminals. So what Imran Khan is doing is actually re-establishing the movement for freedom of the people of the subcontinent. So the revolution, and he has said it quite clearly without any hesitation, he has said that if I am prepared, that is Imran Khan said about the threat that the incumbent holders of power in Pakistan, the threat they pose to Imran Khan because of what they did with Shahzad Gill, is an illustration, is a pointer, is a kind of hint, the sign of things to come. Because these criminals will go to any length to stop the revolution. And so what Imran Khan said was, when you are prepared to die for the cause, these little kind of disagreements and things don't really matter. Now that is what is happening. Imran Khan is full of the real stuff, just like Gokhale said about Jinnah. Gokhale said about Jinnah that this guy, Muhammad Ali Jinnah, has real stuff in him. Now Imran Khan may have been underrated, understated when he started out as a quote politician, as a playboy in England and as a cricketer. But experience has taught him over the last 25 years something that he has begun to speak about, like Ibn Khaldun. Absolutely brilliant reference, brilliant timing. And, in the poems and the poetry of Muhammad Iqbal, like Khudi and Asrar-e Khudi and other big poems and big moments of spiritual realization. Now, these are the materials that revolution really is or are based on. And I think there is a movement underway right now across Pakistan that is frightening the likes of Modi, not because Pakistan is going to invade, but the Indian people are going to take notice, which they are doing. It is that will be the real lesson for Modi to learn. So we shall come back to all of these in due course. Now, back on the situation in the so-called United Kingdom, let's see what the criminal congenital liar Johnson is up to. What is he doing? Now, this is a electronic tiger. That is the electronic structure of a tiger. Where is this? Is it showing there? No, it's not showing there, is it? Well, we'll have to find a way of... This is an electronic tiger structure. It's an architecture that I photographed in the Tower Hill area, not far from the Tower of London. And it's a beautiful idea. And I think when it is night time and the power is switched on, the image takes on a different, compelling kind of shape and appearance. So, what is happening with the congenital liar Boris Johnson? Well, apparently during Thursday there has been a hustling organized by the Daily Bariscrapts. But these are the summaries. And the one the Telegraph one 44 minutes ago, we are looking at that item at 21:53 hours GMT, so 44 minutes ago. It's the heading says, Truss's cost of living plan risks pushing millions of vulnerable people into destitution, says Sunak. Now, that's the Telegraph's admission. Because that heading shows that even the Boris Graph is accepting that Sunak is more substantial than they wanted to say he was. And what is Sunak is doing, although he never had any working class friend, etc., etc., he is now coming to realize that appealing to the people's rights and the idea of fairness is by far the most and important and valuable service that any politician seeking the kind of office that he is doing must actually come across as recognizing and being comfortable with. Whereas Liz Truss is haughty, dismissive, and boastful. Now, quite what she thinks she has that Rishi Sunak doesn't have will be, of course, revealed later after the result is settled. But I think she is obviously racist, and Sunak, being of Indian origin, is, of course, being targeted by the racists in all kinds of ways. They're not necessarily admitting it because the Conservative Party is operating very much secretly. So Sunak's attackers mainly are jealous of him because he's making more sense compared to Lizzie Truss, that is. He's making more economic sense than Lizzie Truss has been making because she has had to stage 3 or more U-turns in the last 2 days about things that really matter. And so therefore, it is going to be quite remarkable if Sunak actually beats Liz Truss. I'm saying that. Nobody else is saying that, or probably they're saying, I haven't seen that. But my instinct has been that Liz Truss was a lightweight right from the beginning. Not only is the fact that she was married when she was sleeping with another married man called Mark Field, whose life and career she singularly destroyed. Mark Field is not even an MP now. And she is not only an MP and, quote, married with her timid, docile husband who should have left her a long time ago. But, anyways, she thinks that she controls him, or she gives the idea. Now, she has got an air about her that says that I'm the new Margaret Thatcher. Now, we saw Margaret Thatcher when she was still opposition MP and not leader of the Conservatives. She was under the shadow of Edward Heath, who was the Conservatives leader. But the manner, the mannerism, the style, the etc. that Liz Truss has displayed so far, they constitute the acts of a desperate person. We shall comment on all of that in due course more extensively. We go to the state of the elected mayor in Tower Hamlets, and looking at the evidence as we are saying about the connection between the elected mayor post and the delivery of service owed by the council to the local community. The evidence shows that is a lie. The line that they say the elected mayor would deliver thinks that the previous form, that is leader-based council, could not deliver is a lie. And what has happened in the Northeast? Michael Gove and others have been secretly conspiring to do this completely stupid thing. They have been repeatedly saying that having a mayor amounts to delivering solution to the billions of pounds worth of problems. I'm going off the screen for 2 minutes or maybe 1 minute. And we shall come back to talk about Michael Gove. The audacity on the part of Liz Truss to even suggest that Rishi Sunak is a Brexiteer is a Remainer, as opposed to her being a Brexiteer, is astounding audacity. She was the Remainer, and Sunak was the Brexiteer. And Sunak actually appeared or began to appear on various media platforms, speaking consistently in highly exaggerated praise of the liar Boris Johnson. And for his role at that stage, Johnson, when he became leader of the Conservatives, rewarded Sunak with the second most important post in the government, which is the finance minister, also known as the Chancellor of the Exchequer. Now, Sunak, being in post as the Chancellor of the Exchequer, has seen the inside workings of the economy far more closely than Liz Truss will ever do. And so he is using his insider knowledge very effectively at this stage of the Conservative Party inner kind of battles. And I think that will significantly help Sunak overcome Liz Truss and get the necessary number of votes from the Conservative grassroots, so-called, and he will get into number 10. That is the position that I state as an observation, not as a prediction that it will actually happen. It's a likely scenario. Ceteris paribus, that is to say, everything remaining the same. And if something goes wrong or something unpredictable and things change, then that is something I'm also including in the possibilities. But if things remain the same, ceteris paribus, as Mr. Schumpeter, the lecturer at Sylhet Murari Chand College, used to say, Mr. Schumpeter used to lecture on economics. I think Mr. Schumpeter came from the Kumilla district or someplace in nearby. And he was a talented economist, and he was a talented student of philosophy and scholarship. So he, like many of our lecturers at MC College in Sylhet, were highly versed and highly educated, highly schooled in things that people in the United Kingdom institutions may never imagine possible. For example, we had a lecturer who taught us logic. Amazing. I mean, his knowledge of logic was tremendous. And I became familiar with logic and I became excited reading logic because of his enthusiasm. And Mr. Mazharul Haq, who taught us history, Islamic history, who went on to the Dhaka College after leaving MC College, almost about the same time that we did, his students. So the MC College at that time in the 1960s had some of the most well-educated lecturers and teachers. I mean, they knew Latin, they knew logic, they knew all manner of things. Aristotle, we knew about Aristotle and Plato and other thinkers, other masters we learned about in MC College. And when I went to Dr. High School in Gulabganj, two of our teachers, of course, one was probably the longest serving or longest in post head teacher of a high school, and his deputy. His deputy was Mr. We called him, well, let's talk about the head teacher first. We called the deputy head teacher Lolaimia, and the head teacher was, of course, from Tilfara in Bianibazar. and he was a Brahmin, and Mr. Lolaimia was a Muslim. The two of them worked very well together, and they matched each other's intellect. What actually is important for students, young people at that stage, is the depth of knowledge and brilliance of their teachers. That is what is missing in most places. And we were lucky that Kirot Chandra Bose, Kirot Chandra Purkasto, Kirot Babu was the head teacher of the Doctoral High School. And Lolaimia was the deputy head teacher. And when they marked the language papers, the English and Bengali, I mean, amazingly, the two of them gave me identical marks. They marked separately the papers that I sat. But the both of them gave me absolutely identical marks. Can you believe it? So I enjoyed being in the doctoral school because of these teachers. And we had a teacher, Islamic teacher, who came from Bonni, who walked all the way from Bonni every day. And he was a kind of alim, educated in madrasa. But he too was a brilliant man with absolutely deep, deep knowledge, as did our literature, Bengali teacher from just east of the river Kushiara in the region of just east of Badeshwar, east of Kaniyai. And he taught us about the Hindu classical literature, classical history. And he also taught extracurricular literature, Hindu mythologies. We didn't have any need for that, but it benefited us because knowing the background of the Hindu mythologies. And one of the books, or one of the writers of one of the books that he was fond of, one of the books was about their Hinglaj, the Hindu pilgrimage that took place somewhere in Sindh, which is in Pakistan now, Hinglaj. And the book in Bengali was Moru Tirtho Hinglaj. So when I went to Calcutta and found this flood of bookshops, I mean, nothing like that existed in Dhaka ever. The bookshops in Calcutta were like a flood. Literally, millions of books were being sold. And there were so many ordinary people in Calcutta crowding the bookshops. And I could spend the whole life just picking the books. What am I talking about? I'm talking about the mythology about the congenital liar Boris Johnson, who the British media, the Fleet Street, have built an image about. They said that he's a classic, original scholar in classic Greek, and so on. Now I have news for them. We, in the little parts of the world, like Silot in Bangladesh now, we learned classic, other classics like Persian, Arabic, in addition to our own mother languages. And the wisdom that we got introduced to contained the sources like Ibn Khaldun. Ibn Khaldun that Imran Khan correctly has begun to talk about during Thursday. I mean, Ibn Khaldun and the Saint Rumi of Persia. Rumi was a teacher, historically, in terms of kind of ethical philosophy of Muhammad Iqbal, and Rumi was a teacher of the Bidruhi Kobi Nazrul Islam. Now, these are real intellectual giants that sit comfortably alongside the giant Rabindranath Tagore. And yet, in the discussion so-called of the purpose of independence, the so-called leaders don't talk about any of these people. Even Neeraj Chaudhary, who was condemned by most of the kind of Bengalis before he died, I mean, Neeraj Chaudhary, despite the fact that he got a lot of kind of slogans wrong, and I think he was being naughty. I think Neeraj Chaudhary was being naughty rather than stupid or evil when he praised the British, which he did. I mean, he became known for his autobiography of an unknown Indian. And when I saw that title in the street of Calcutta, I couldn't believe it. I said, this is real stuff. And he was deep. Neeraj Chaudhary was very intelligent and very profound. But some of his observations were wrong. Quite what went wrong with him, I don't know. But he was kind of wrong to praise the empire and condemn, at the same time, condemn the Hindu traditions, the Hindu history, the Muslim history. Well, Muslim history not so much as the Hindu history. Neeraj Chaudhary condemned the Hindu history, his own kind of tradition, much more extensively than he did any other faith. So, what we shall be doing in this kind of channel is discuss these people, because none of the ethnicity linked outlets has done that, and the racist ones, the mainstream will never do that. And I don't believe that there is any outlet in India or Pakistan or Bangladesh that will be doing it, because they're too narrow. And we shall come to how Imran Khan is kind of tackling the narrow kind of agenda of the media outlets and media. I mean, he supported the media, the journalists that have been harassed in the middle of the night, etc., which is the right thing to do. But most of the outlets lack the independence of the mind to engage in educational journalism, investigative journalism, and commentary. So Ibn Khaldun, for example, I mean, of course, Aristotle and Socrates and Plato and others, they will be forever revered and respected. But Ibn Khaldun, because he's so near us, I mean, Ibn Khaldun has more impact and more relevance than any of those or any of the others that, well, in the case of the philanderer and kind of liar and crook, Bill Clinton, Clinton never mentioned any of those people, philosophers. I mean, Clinton was carried away by the reputation that he can read very fast and he's quite clever. Essentially, Clinton crumbled while in office because of his corruption and dishonesty, infidelity, and the fact that he was in a marriage with a woman who openly said that her husband was completely dysfunctional in more ways than can be stated in one program. And so the Clinton, both were clever people, but they fell to the ground because of the lack of character. And they fell also because the Democratic Party and the background to the Democratic Party in the USA remains very much part of the genocidist racists that murdered and massacred the original nations and set up the Europeans United States. The reason why the persistence of the gun owning, gun ownership defeats all the opposition is to be found in the psyche of the genocidist founders of the USA. When you go to Brazil, look at the state of the demography. Brazil is on the outside. Brazil is white, but Brazil is not populated by white people. Huge numbers of black people of African origin and of local origins, let's say, live in Brazil. But the political front lines are occupied by the white people. And Brazil is the biggest country in the whole of the continent. It is a continental country itself. So important is Brazil because of the Amazon forests and what this fascist is doing, that no way a fascistic future administration or racist administration, if Lola comes back, he won't make any difference in terms of the fundamental changes that need to be made about the environment in Brazil, about the environmental policy. And if you look at the British papers, what do you read? Nothing. The British newspapers are still living in where can we place them historically? In the 16th century. They don't recognize the huge material changes that have happened in the subcontinent of India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, or in China. I mean, Liz Truss tries to imitate Nancy Pelosi, trying to intimidate the Chinese about Taiwan. I mean, she threatens Putin, Liz Truss. I mean, what on earth does she think she has in terms of whatever power she thinks she has to apply against either the Chinese or the Russians? The future of the world is in dialogue, in real respect and recognition, and essentially in establishing, pursuing justice across the world. Ibn Khaldun said that. The Prophet of Islam said that. And so therefore, the revolution that Imran Khan is now at the front of is bound to go forward, no matter who kind of gets what kind of punishment in the process. And that is the only place where the revolution is taking place. Nowhere else in the world is a revolution remotely comparable to what is happening in Pakistan is taking place. So Pakistan is the future of Brazil. Pakistan is the future of Mexico, where the Muslims were murdered. Imran Khan mentioned today, 4 Muslims were murdered. And Pakistan is the future of the real democratic USA. Pakistan is the future of the whole of the subcontinent and lots of the countries in the Far East, so-called. And that is a peaceful future in the sense that it has to be a future without war, without violence, without murders, and it is a future without migration, the need to escape and flee. Imran Khan is addressing what should have been addressed and what I said should have been addressed in my broadcast on Channel 4 news slot in January 1992. So we shall be talking about all of those in due course. So coming back to Tower Hamlets, what did we discuss yesterday about tar hamlets? We extensively discussed the behavior of Luther Roman's quote, so-called supporter called Councillor Kabir Ahmed. Councillor Kabir Ahmed appeared as broadcast on the BBC Newsnight's report dated the 19th of May 2022. And Councillor Kabir Ahmed said on the record words to the effect that Luther Roman's quote success on the 5th of May 2022 was proof that his political opponents or critics were vindicated. That's a contradiction. I mean, logical, illogical. Remember the empirical logic lessons that we learned in the 1960s. And I think that Luther Roman is more stupid than Abbas Uddin Ali Salal said, or Abbas Uddin Ali Salal said in his dossier against Luther Roman submitted to the Labour Party's National Executive Committee in August, September, I think, 2010. Because Kabir Ahmed, if that is the command of logic and sense on his part, is not fit to be put forward as a supporter of anybody, let alone of Luther Roman, on a program that is a mainstream leading program of news and current affairs in the UK, Newsnight on BBC. It's going to be there on iPlayer for another few months. And the BBC is not going to edit the content in order to accommodate Kabir Ahmed. Because Kabir Ahmed, effectively, in paraphrase I am using, has said that Luther Roman's critics have been vindicated. Now, the critics have condemned Luther Roman as a crook and a fraudster. So if that is what Kabir Ahmed says, then he is, of course, agreeing with Luther Roman's opponents. He is not supporting Luther Roman at all, although he was given that spot by David Grossman as a so-called supporter of Luther Roman. So where are the others? The three signatories to the petition. I say three because one of the fourth one, Debbie Simon. I mean, Debbie Simon runs miles if she hears that Andy Earlham is about to come down the street. Debbie Simon got completely pissed off with Andy Earlham's selfish idiocy. And Azmal Hussain is not somebody that can be relied on to understand anything in terms of the constitution, in terms of the democracy, etc. in this country. And the UKIP woman is less spoken about, the better. So they are the ones actually who are on the list of the signatories, and they have been persistently wrongly given credit as the campaigners against Luther Roman. They were not campaigners against Luther Roman at all, because the spur, the real impetus that underlay that particular petition was Azmal Hussein's personal grudge against Luther Roman and his cronies. And Azmal Hussain wanted Luther Roman to apologize for his cronies' behavior. And Luther Roman refused to do that. So Azmal Hussain went around seeking alternative views as to how to teach Luther Roman a lesson. And eventually he was told that he could do that by organizing a petition according to the procedure, which Azmalushan did. And as a direct result of that petition, Richard Morey ruled on the 23rd of April 2015 that Luthuroman was guilty of electoral offences, wrongdoings, based on which he was unfit to remain in post of the mayor of Trabscrapts. And he was banned for 5 years or so from standing for election into another public office. The only other person from Trabscrapts to be given similar treatment, not anywhere near as severe, but similar treatment as Luthuroman was Luthuroman's chief of staff, the enforcer, Alibor Chaudhary. Alibor Chaudhary showed no emotion, no remorse. As she told me that he knew all along, that Colin Cormack did not want to do the job of providing housing. As I said in previous editions, Colin Cormack, Alibor Chaudhary and Luthuroman feature in an extended investigative series which examines how their misconduct and their criminality, illegality, caused damages and losses to the community, humanity, worth billions of pounds. Remember the word billions I'm using. So watch out, watch this space. We move item-wise, that is to say item. The next item is this: racists in Fleet Street newspapers are really caught unawares by Rishi Sunak, because all the racists in Fleet Street are finding one way or the other to flock to the side of Liz Truss without any reason. I mean, they're just coming across for Liz Truss because they're racist, they're prejudiced, they're biased against Sunak, not because Liz Truss has merit in context. So we shall be talking about all of that in due course. Now, we have other items that we'll talk about in the next edition. This is, how long have we been on this one? This is 1 hour and 8 minutes and half, 8 minutes, yes. And this is time-wise 22 hours, 9 minutes, 22:09 GMT and 23:09 UK time on Thursday, the 11th of August 2022. We have another part dated the Thursday, the 11th of August 2022, but we shall start broadcasting it maybe into the Friday, the 12th of August 2022.